This is Heather Lockett. We are back with the Dr. Reverend Minister Laurel Geise today for another part of our lovely conversation. Thank you so much. We'll now circle back into your soul guided journaling, where if we're now, some people talk about stream of consciousness or even recording with your voice or something and let it sit. You've mentioned this, and you do have a handout about the soul journaling. But letting it come out, letting the invitations, letting the information stream on through, and maybe it's for your now, and maybe it's for later on. So it sounds like moments like that, you received all this information, and then is there a next or a not yet, and all the different aspects of these things. Yeah.
Right. Well, and that's why I love soul guided journaling so much. And I've been teaching this almost 30 years because it started for me after I started meditating. And I was just simply guided to do this. And first, let me explain the technique and then we can talk more about it. But what's interesting, so I meditate. That's the way that I find my center, my peace, my stillness.
And did you do that prior to the 2012 or the 2008, or
Yes.
had you began your own practices, if you
Yes.
will? Or for me personally, everything for me, that's why I kind of giggled about the 2012, because my life went ha ha ha, and then it was 2013 where we met. It was the 2013, and yes, your book was invaluable to me. Because I had to start there. I literally had to start there. So were you, even during your corporate life and your other perhaps church or unchurched upbringing, so you actually began your walk a long time ago?
Yeah, I began in 1995. So almost 30 years.
Okay.
And that's when I learned how to meditate. And it was not much longer after that where this soul guided journaling came to me. And it was like, okay, so, I'm meditating for 20, 30 minutes in the morning. And I have the journal there, and I simply allow whatever comes to me to be captured in the journal. So it could be, because in the beginning it was like a couple of words. Maybe it would be a couple of sentences. Sometimes I'd like draw a picture. Maybe it would be colors, maybe an emotion. I mean, it's not limited as to, how your soul is communicating with you, right? So you have this, I call it like the soul connection time, where I'm in the quiet, the stillness, and I can just allow that bond with my soul, that communication to be received. And it's just a direct revelation of the soul to your awareness, right? And so I receive it, and then and I don't care about spelling or grammar or any of that, it's just whatever comes, and then I put it away. Now here's what I call the secret to soul guided journaling, is because I do believe that if you try to read what you just received, I found that my ego, my personality, got in the way. My personality was like, well, this is just the silliest thing you've ever done. And why are you going to write this down? And why would you listen to that? I mean, it was really pronounced for me. And so I was like, well, I can't, receive this. So I put the journal away. And then what I did was I read it the next morning. And so a couple of things. Number one, every day when you wake up, you have something to read from your soul. It's a gift every single day. And then I read this. But what I found is that, the first time you read it, and you can read it in this space of, the ego not being right there to criticize it, you can actually cognize it the way that your soul meant for you to receive it. Because as you know, like this is a multi-dimensional communication, so there's a lot of layers to it. And so I may read it today, and then I go into my meditation, and then I do the soul journaling again and put it away, and then do the same thing day after day. Now, here's the beauty. so many beautiful things about it. But is the fact that I like to go back like once a month and I like to read everything that I have received in that month. Because the more you read it and reread it, you begin to, there are layers and layers to the information that you're receiving. And then I like to go back once a quarter and read. And I can see, by looking back, I can see forward. I can see where my path is going. And then the most fun thing to do is at the end of the year is to read the whole year's worth. And when you do that, I like to call it the heroine's journey, because you can literally see your own evolutionary journey
Right.
unfolding in front of you. And it is, to me, it's one of the greatest gifts that you can give to yourself if you're choosing to actively participate in your conscious evolution.
I love that you just said that, because the thought came into my own mind is the word editor. And so I've had plenty of times where all this information, all this beautiful stuff comes pouring out, whether it makes sense or not. But as you were just finishing this piece of the conversation, I was thinking of that self editing. So, what you just said, if we allow the information and allow and basically step out of our own way, right? And allow our judges, our self judges, our editors that
Yes.
want to get it right, or I don't dare put this on paper, or what will somebody think, or what will I think about myself? What all those little, wow, that's very powerful. So you want to talk to us about that, because you've been leading groups in the soul journaling, and have you found others that haven't been able to find that kind of allowance that you're talking about?
Yeah. So so when I was going through my spiritual awakening 30 years ago, I didn't have anyone to talk to. I was in a corporate job flying around the world, very busy. And yet I'm having past life experiences. I'm soul journaling. I'm starting to see things. I might be hearing, I see with my divine eyes. I'm hearing with my divine ears. I'm knowing a lot of things and nobody to talk to. So one of the things I did was I started to lead soul guided journaling workshops, because and I've taught all over the country. I've taught on in Europe, Africa, Asia, South America. I've taught almost. I haven't taught in Antarctica yet, or Australia, but that will happen one day.
Absolutely.
But I've
Absolutely.
taught a lot. This simple practice completely changed my life, because the guidance that you receive, and you can do it every day or you can do it once a week, it's up to you. But to me, it's like every time you do this, you're strengthening that conscious connection with the soul.
Mhm.
And in that conscious strengthening of that connection, you're actually beginning to embody more of the soul. There was a Indian sage, his name was Sri Aurobindo, and he lived in the early 1900s, late 1800s through mid 1900s. And he was a lawyer who then had mystical experiences and spent his whole life chasing this, this concept of the divine and the embodiment of the divine. And he called it the divinization of the human body, the
Mm.
divinization. And ever since I've learned about that, that's really what I feel is going on here. It's just like, okay, so as an example, think about a swimmer. And every time that swimmer jumps in the swimming pool and comes out, there's like a thin layer of water on the skin, right? Well, it's the
Right.
same thing. When we spend time every day diving into our soul, right? That soul connection, and we come out of that experience, we are embodying more and more of that essence, of that energy, right? Of that vibration frequency of the soul in the human body. That's what we're doing. We're actually embodying the soul, embodying the spirit. And I think, for us, I feel like that's our next evolutionary step, because with that embodiment, we're living where we are more peaceful, and we are more loving, and we're more compassionate, and we have more bliss, and we can give more, and we can be of service because we are literally embodying those characteristics and qualities.
Absolutely. And so I love that. So the practice is very fruitful and beneficial. And now you've just segued us into another level, as a matter of fact, where, and this gets into lasting conversations where, it's not me, it's not even about you and I talking right now. It's about a conveyance of a state of being that is
Right.
possible. And we're going to get into the hurricanes in just a second, but that level of a new resonance,
Yeah.
and I can speak for myself. If we're running around fearful and angry and all of these things, which may our stories and our come froms would have been very, very tangible and very, very right and true. And then, and I've certainly had those moments, there's got to be a better way, or there is another way. So
Yeah.
that when the things are happening or they did happen, we can now not still live there and not carry all of that fracturedness and all of that tension and all of the goo and gunk, right? And
Yeah.
so walk us through a little bit more of that, because when we're in
Yeah.
this, we can say light, and I want to, and you're the perfect bridge for this. Without, there's the spiritual, which can get airy fairy, which could then also disconnect, and I've certainly been part of some of that. But this is something different now, where it is very tangible. It
Mhm.
is multi-aspected and multi-dimensional, and rooted and grounded, so that we are now walking forward. And some people would say, well, how do you feel like you're unicorns and rainbows all the time? Not necessarily, but it can feel like that to some people, because
Right.
we're coming from another space.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, so it kind of takes me into that whole conversation about our awareness and our and yes, I like what you said about being grounded, right? This
Right.
is, this is practical. Um,
Right.
the shift that's going on within us and the choice that we make to participate in our conscious evolution.
Yep.
And what I have found is that over the years, that as our awareness expands, we move from that purely focused. I always say the ego goes to the back seat, and the soul becomes your cosmic chauffeur, right? So the
Right.
ego is still there, but the soul is really driving the car now, right? And when we can live in that space, in my experience, it becomes life becomes more of an observation, even though I'm participating fully in life, let there be no mistake.
Right.
My life is crazy, but I can actually live my life with that grace and ease because I have allowed that connection with the soul to become stronger, more of that energy embedded in me. And, again, I think it's important to have conversations about it, Heather, which is why I love what you're doing here because that's why I offer like a monthly soul guided journaling experience. Here's why. Because when this all started happening to me, and I was waking up and I was learning and expanding and having magical experiences, I didn't have anybody to talk to about it.
Right.
And so I have, this small group of people. We get together once a month, and it's a safe, sacred space, just what you're providing here. It's a safe, sacred space where we can talk about, what's going on. And the basis of it is our soul journal, because we've been capturing, the essence of the soul every day, and maybe writing down synchronicities because,
Right.
that's a sign, right? That all these synchronicities are happening, or maybe dreams, right? Maybe I had a
Right.
dream, or maybe I had a different consciousness experience, and I don't have to feel weird about it
Right.
because, you're with a group of human beings who are all having, similar types of experiences, right? Because I
Mhm.
think we are. I think we all have the same types of experiences. It's just how do we incorporate that into our lives? And I think, for me with the meditation and the soul guided journaling, I always have this feeling like even if I'm alone, I'm supported.
Right.
I have the words of my soul to console me if I need to be consoled, or if I need to be encouraged. The words are there to encourage me. And, that gentle guidance. And it's just meant for you, which is how beautiful is that, right? So
Absolutely beautiful.
so
It's like a warm fuzzy blanket for yourself, right?
it is. And I'm
Yeah.
so and I know, I live in Florida, and I'll go out to the beach and I'll take my soul journals and I'll be reading them, and people stop by and say, "Hey, what are you reading?" And I'll tell them I'm reading my
A
soul.
really great book. I'm
Really
reading a really good book.
But my soul journal. People are like, that looks, that's interesting. That could be, that could be fun. I'm going, it is. It's a lot of fun, and it's fun to have that record of your journey.
Right.
Because sometimes, we can feel like, geez, like I feel like I'm stuck, or I feel like I don't know which way to go, or I don't, all these questions, right? And, when I'm in that space, I'll just, grab my soul journals, and maybe it's for the last couple months, maybe it's for last year, and I'll just sit down and read and go through, and I'll find quotes, I'll find what I call soul mantras, to live by. One of my favorites is simply allow all to unfold. Simply allow all to unfold. Now, I've had that mantra for almost 30 years. And let me tell you, that came out of a soul journal entry. And the more I live with it, the more I understand it. But it's good for me when I find myself in that turbulent space to just say to myself, simply allow all to unfold. It comes back to that concept of surrender. And, so I did some investigation into surrender because I never liked that word. For me, surrender meant to give up, right? I didn't like it. I'm like, why is everybody saying you should surrender, And so I did some research, and the actual etymology of the word, it comes from the 15th century. And it's actually comes from the word surrendre. And that word, it actually means to give back. To give back. So when you think about surrender, think about surrendre, which means to give back. And I like to add to give back control of my life to my soul.
I was just thinking, give back to ourselves.
Exactly.
Right. To give back to ourselves. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So that's what all this soul guided living is, right? So, soul guided living is, I use a mantra of listen, align, act. Listen, align, act. So we listen and we capture our guidance in the soul journal. We read that soul journal, we align our life, and then we take action. So it's very simple, right? Listen, align, act. And that practice, I call it a sacred practice, a soul guided journaling, helps us to bring that all together. So, what a journey and what a gift. And I'm so grateful that you asked me to be here so that I could share that, because I really feel, you were speaking about contributions earlier, and I really feel like that's my contribution to the evolution of human beings, is that, getting closer with the self, the soul, and following that guidance. In fact, I have a quote, if I could share with you. I love this quote. So there was a gentleman, let's see, where is this quote? And in 1894, I got it here. 1894, there was a gentleman named Baird T. Spalding, and he went on a journey in India and Tibet and China for many years. And he met with all these teachers of the East. And he wrote this series of books. It's fantastic. It's called The Life and Teaching of the Masters of the Far East. Highly recommend it. Little tiny books, so much wisdom. But there's a quote in this book that just, for me, this was several years ago, it just was like, you're on the right path, right? You're on the right path. So in this book, it says, true mastery. So we talk about mastering our lives, right? Being the master of our universe. True mastery is living the instruction of the inner teacher.
Oh, say that again. Very nice.
True mastery
Okay.
is living the instruction of the inner teacher. The
I
inner
love it.
self. And for me, that just pulled it all together for me. I was like, that's amazing. Like that over, 100 years ago, this gentleman was in the Far East talking to all of these gurus and masters. And that, that one sentence I took away from his like 6-book collection, it was, that's it right there. That's it. We are masters. And we're masters because we're allowing that guidance to come to us and we're living it. We're living the instructions of the self. My goodness, how beautiful, divinely architected, right?
It's so perfect. And this is again, I know we're at this perfect wavelength right now because I was, as you were speaking even just a few moments ago, oh, Laura's a born teacher. You can just go on and I know you've been a presenter and a public speaker very often. So it comes so naturally to you. And so here you found this beautiful pearl that is reminding you like, oh, Laurel, the teacher, Laurel, the presenter, that is that guide. And so it's so beautiful. And then there was another thing. Oh, here we go. As we pre-chatted, this ties back into as we are walking perhaps those turbulent times. Now, not only we both live in Florida, there have been two hurricanes, but you are on the West Coast where everything was aimed right to you.
Yes.
That it was literally a turbulent time. We had 15 tornadoes around here, so there was that. But to walk this walk as you are describing, and with your elderly parents, so you had to evacuate not once but twice, if I'm right.
Yeah,
or just the once.
Yes.
So
we had 2 hurricanes in less than 2 weeks.
Yeah. Right.
I've lived here 27 years. It's
Right.
never happened before. The first hurricane we didn't evacuate, but we got a highest storm surge. So during a hurricane, the water, you imagine the force of a hurricane going 120, 30 miles an hour, bringing all that water from the ocean inland, right? It's called the storm surge, and it depends on where the storm lands. So we had the highest storm surge we had ever had here was 5 feet, and we had 8.5 feet. Never happened before. So I live in a condo building, just kind of as a story. We had 3 feet of water in the garage and the lobby of the building, which ruined almost all the cars. My car survived, but it's an older car. But I think they towed 42 cars out of here that all were destroyed. And the elevators were destroyed. So that was just, that was a lot in and of itself.
And that was the first one? That was Helene? That was the first one.
So now
this has all been within the last month. This is just happened. Not that long ago, right?
This has happened. Yeah. So then, so I take care of my parents. They're 88. So I live on the 2nd floor and they live on the 3rd floor of this condo tower. So it's like living in a dorm. So I take care of them. But you can imagine like no electricity, no Wi-Fi, we had water then, but it took a while to get that all back. So we finally get our electricity back. We finally got the elevators working again after we're getting the cars towed away. My dad's car was destroyed, which was very sad. But all that, and then all of a sudden there's another hurricane. Now this hurricane, Milton, at one point was a category 5. That like 180 mile an hour winds. It was like the biggest thing I've ever seen in my lifetime coming right at us. So we're like, we must evacuate. So I took my parents, packed them up, put them in the car, went to my niece's house in Tampa. Well, she didn't feel comfortable in Tampa because
Right.
there's an old house and single pane windows and
Yeah.
big trees, and so
Yeah.
she was very
And
uncomfortable.
it was aiming it right
She
at
was like,
Tampa
"Yeah,
also. Yeah. Yeah.
so it was like, okay, we have to leave now. This is like, so I'm like, all right. So I'm there with my parents. So here we have. So here's the circus. We have me. We have my mother and father. They're both 88, going on 89. We have my brother and sister-in-law who are visiting from Ohio. Had never been in a hurricane before. Okay. I have my nephew, his dog, a big chocolate lab, and then my niece and her two girls, 3 and 5 years old. Okay, so this is the group that we have to evacuate. And my niece's husband is a firefighter, EMT, but he was working at the Tampa Emergency Command Center. So he
Okay.
was not coming home. So it took a while because you can imagine it was the biggest evacuation in the history of Florida.
Sure.
So
Right.
there was no water. We ran out of gasoline, food. I mean, it was like an apocalypse, and we're just trying to get out of town. So you've got millions of people. So we headed to Orlando because that's where I could find a hotel room. But we had to get 3 hotel rooms because we had 9 people and the dog, and we had to find a hotel that actually took
Yeah.
dogs. So it was very stressful coordinating all this, getting the gas to get to Orlando, which it took hours and hours and hours, was, something that should take an hour and a smidge took like 3 hours. And then just, even at the hotel, so this one hotel was taking dogs and there was hundreds and hundreds of dogs there. And of course
Wow.
the hotel was oversold.
Yeah.
And there were people walking in literally off the street trying to find a room. I mean,
Yeah.
this was
It
probably one
was.
of the craziest things, my experiences in my life. And then I have, the troops with me too, right?
Right.
So, but and I followed, my intuition, because my intuition was, I'm going to go early and make sure that we actually have those hotel rooms. So
Right.
my mom and I went early in the morning, and I was glad that we did, because we actually did, get rooms, thank God. And then we had insulin from my parents. So I had, that had to be kept cold, and I needed refrigerators. I mean, it was just a lot.
Right.
So talk about, and I was in the moment, right? So you're in the present moment, but you're also feeling, I mean, I felt grounded. I didn't fall apart or anything. Everybody else was falling apart, because it's pretty strange.
Even within your group, or were you kind
Yeah.
of, are they part of this sphere of the juice that we're talking about, or
Um,
that they were having their own
oh,
journeys and their own moments?
yeah. They were having
Yeah.
their own thing.
And that's okay, because it was very intense. It really is. And if
It
you're a
was
medical,
intense.
if you're scared about your
Yeah.
insulin, I mean, it's
Right.
a big deal. It is a big deal.
And
Yeah.
then the hurricane goes by, and then, then we can't go home. And I only had
Right.
the rooms for like 3 or 4 days. And we didn't have water. We didn't have electricity. We didn't have sewers. We didn't, the water main
Back
broke.
where you live, or even in
Yeah,
Orlando?
no, where I live. The
Okay,
hotel
because there
was
were
fine.
pockets. There were pockets
Yeah,
that even in there were pockets, because there were then subsequent tornadoes all over the place,
sure,
that
sure.
lost power also. So, but where you were in your evacuation space had the
Yeah.
power, but you could
Actually,
not get back.
I couldn't get
You
home.
could not. You couldn't get home. Yeah.
Couldn't get home because the roads were all covered with debris. And
Yeah.
so we ended up staying away. We ended up staying 8 days before we came home.
Wow. Okay.
Because there was no electricity, no water, no sewage, no Wi-Fi, any of that, cable, no cell towers, no gasoline.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually went out at 5 o'clock in the morning after the storm and got some gas, just so that I knew my tank was full and I could get back home. But yeah, so ended up, and then I had to ask the hotel, could I please stay longer? We
Hmm.
had all these people, and they accommodated us, and I was so incredibly grateful.
Hmm.
But and then, we came home 8 days later, and then you have to deal with the cleanup of everything, because it was just, our property is fine. Thank God, we have storm shutters, and we were high enough, but it looked like to your point, tornadoes. I mean, all the trees here, just so much destruction, so much destruction. It's just unbelievable. So, yeah, it's, living this, I can say that if I wasn't meditating every day, if I wasn't doing
Right.
my soul guided journaling, if I wasn't tapping into my own soul mantras that I use, if, all of that, what actually was so useful, and, trying to be calm and
Mhm.
maintaining that, and just, observing what was going on and taking care of everyone, and then getting everyone, back home, and then the subsequent follow up from that. I mean, we had what, millions of people that didn't have electricity and water.
Right.
And it was, so it's, life is going to happen. And it's just, how are you going to choose to react to it, right? And you can do so very mindfully. Doesn't mean that it's not hard. It is
Right.
hard. But at least you can, for me, I felt very, just very grounded during the whole thing. Didn't get upset, which was good, because there was a lot of people around there. But we made it through, and I was grateful. I was grateful for the help. I was grateful for the hotel, and I'm grateful for all the people that there were so many people reaching out to me to make sure that we were okay. Um,
Right.
so that was very special too. So I think
Yeah.
you're right. I mean, this it's you have to ride those waves of life, but I think the more tools you have, the more practices, what fits in your lifestyle,
Hmm.
you really can start to gather these tools and use them in a very specific way, and just know that it's all going according to plan.
It's so true. It's so true. And to maintain the proverbial calm within the storm, right?
Yes,
So it's
that's
not to discount that the things aren't happening, whatever your thing is.
right.
Um, However, where we can find that very source core within ourselves
Right.
to maintain some balance. That also said, I don't know about you. Well, the people around us and the earth angels and the people that can have our backs. And it felt very palpable. I remember literally feeling, oh, someone's hugging me and praying for me right now. I just feel it, right? Because there was a lot of high energy trying to lift things and tell Milton to back off and all of those things. So this is where we can receive such fruit and such gifts, right?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
turn the TV off. So sometimes not having electricity gives us this time
Right.
to really go in or talk to another human being and or color or write or let out a scream if you have to, whatever it is, but to not be necessarily glued unless and until you need some news. But otherwise, everything we're talking about is to help be our own news, right? Or find the discernment of something besides what might be screaming at us.
Absolutely. And I think, when after you experience something like this, then and you come back to your community, then there are like so many opportunities for you
Hmm.
to help others
Right.
and to be of service to others. And there's, I think donations are at an all-time high right now here.
Right.
Everybody's outside clearing off the debris. Anything that we had a lot of stuff fall off the roof of the building, so we're still collecting that around the property. But it's just, and then I think just begin to see the generosity of the human
Hmm.
spirit,
Right.
because people I know, they have just started so many drives around here, it's almost like we're adopting people that have lost their homes and then
Right.
and everything, and we're like, okay, what does this family need, and we're just getting them everything that they need. And
Right.
then there's another one, there's another family. I think they said like 4,000 homes were destroyed in our county alone, and that's
Oh, wow.
destroyed. That's not everything else that was, where there was damage, right? So
Right.
there's a lot of people right now in this area that need help. So
Right.
it feels good to be able to support others and to give and to be grateful. I mean, we were so blessed to be able to get through that. Two hurricanes, two. That
Two,
two, yeah,
two back to back. Yeah.
a lot.
It is a lot. And, some people are going through, literal war right now, and other people are
Yes,
going through other medical things right now.
exactly.
Um, yeah. So whatever our own personal tornadoes are or storms, this is where, and when we're not feeling so grounded and blessed and all of these sparkly things, that's where we can reach out for help, right? And ask. Hi, everybody. Our conversation with Laurel will continue in the next episode. For right now, you can find out more on her website at laurelgeise.com. That's Laurel Geise, Geise.com. And we will see you next time.